Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up.
The Pentagon chief orders a guided missile submarine and an aircraft carrier strike group to the Middle East amid soaring tensions. The death toll in Uganda's garbage dump landslides rises to at least 24 as rescue workers continue to search for survivors. And Kenya's LGBTQ community turns to dating apps and social media because they fear being put behind bars. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
We begin our broadcast in the Middle East, where Israeli officials are anticipating an attack by Iran, and U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has ordered a guided missile submarine to the region. Secretary Austin has also ordered the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier strike group to sail more quickly to the Middle East. The Lincoln is set to replace the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier strike group. Austin says the Lincoln will arrive by the end of the month. The move comes as the U.S. and other allies push for Israel and Hamas to reach a ceasefire agreement that could help calm rising tension in the region following the assassination of Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh and a senior Hezbollah commander in Beirut. Israeli and U.S. officials are looking out for retaliatory strikes by both Iran and Hezbollah for the killings. Now to U.S. politics, former President Donald Trump has announced that one of his campaign websites was hacked. The details are still coming in. Trump's vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, has granted several news interviews in which he attacked the Democratic presidential ticket. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz are rallying supporters on the campaign trail with a focus on the economy. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has more.
News that the Trump campaign has been hacked continued making headlines hours after Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump first posted about it Saturday on his Truth social media platform. The post read, "We were just informed by Microsoft Corporation that one of our many websites was hacked by the Iranian government. Iranian officials have rejected the accusations." The documents allegedly hacked reportedly included information about Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. He appeared Sunday on several news shows, but questions focused on the presidential race. On ABC's This Week show, the Ohio senator brushed off renewed criticism on controversial pro-family statements he's made in the past and redirected the attention to the policies of the Democratic presidential ticket.
Why are we talking about inflation? Why are we talking about the fact that groceries are unaffordable thanks to Kamala Harris's policies?
The economy was also a talking point at a Saturday rally for Vice President Harris in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And it is my promise to everyone here, when I am president, we will continue our fight for working families of America. Including to raise the minimum wage and eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Trump made a similar pledge in the past and accused Harris of stealing his no taxes on tips policy. Even as calls grow for Harris to provide more details about her economic plans, the campaign's momentum is undeniable, said Democratic U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar on ABC.
She has ignited the country, starting in Philadelphia to the heartlands of Wisconsin, to that jam-packed rally in Arizona with 15,000 plus people. People are interested in moving forward.
Harris will fly back to Washington Sunday after attending a political event in San Francisco. She and President Joe Biden are expected to make a public appearance together Thursday in Maryland. Donald Trump is scheduled to give remarks about the economy Wednesday in Asheville, North Carolina. Veronica Balderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
Rescue workers in Uganda continue to search for survivors Monday at a vast Kampala garbage dump after a landslide killed at least 24 people. Police say at least 4 children are among those killed in the Kitezi landfill Friday following weeks of torrential rain. A huge mound of garbage at the city's only landfill collapsed late Friday, burying homes on the edge of the site as residents slept. 14 people have been rescued, and according to a police spokesman, however, the Uganda Red Cross says there is no hope of rescuing more people alive.
What you can see from behind is the rubble after the houses were destroyed by the land refill from the rubbish that is deposited here daily. Police, government and the Red Cross have confirmed that after the accident that happened on Saturday, more than 22 bodies have been retrieved from this rubble. The authorities and the Red Cross say they're still excavating more bodies believed to be here in the rubble because more than 1,000 people, according to the government, live in this area.
We envisage to deal with about 1,000 people because looking at the households affected and comparing with sphere standards, we know at least we can estimate each family to have between 6 to 7 people. So we're looking at about 1,000 people. But then majority, more people are coming up to say they were also affected. So for us, we are supporting the emergency for now until until we observe how progress takes shape. By this morning, I can talk of 22 bodies, death toll cumulatively, but also I know there are other people who are still buried under the rubble because some people claim they have missing persons. But then we deployed a team that are experts in dead body management, the Red Cross teams, who are working with the authorities who are excavating so that they are able to retrieve. Chances of getting somebody alive after 48 hours are now at 0.
I lost everything. I lost my family, 3 children, and my wife. For me, I was going to work. Yeah, I was going to work. That's why I'm survived. But they already collapsed. Every time they are totally collapsed. There's not anything. They are collapsed. Everything. I have my pigs, chicken. They have gone. I don't have anything. I don't have anything now. Right now. They are collapsed.
It was a shock that I lost some of my friends during the landfill that happened on Saturday in the morning, but it was a shock really. This thing happened at around 7:30 there, where some of my friends normally who work from that place, they collect rubbish for income. Yeah, I lost some of my friends and some of their bodies have not yet been found. As the people who stay around, we don't know what's next. Yeah, you have seen a communication where the president is saying that people are going to be compensated, but I hope that they will evaluate us correctly.
As you can see, the garbage came all away from there, like a half a kilometer to this side. And my neighbor there is dead. Our neighbor there is dead. So we are still in fear of what might happen above there. We never know, is the magnitude reduced? Is it still falling?
For VOA News, I am Mugume, Davis Rwakarinji in Kampala, Uganda.
Abortion is restricted in Kenya, but in Kilifi County on the southern coast, many women and girls with unplanned pregnancies say they have no choice but to undergo dangerous abortions without the intervention of a nurse or a doctor. Local activists say the practice is contributing to high maternal mortality in the region. Halima Gongo explains.
Mercy Katana says she became pregnant when she was still in secondary school. She says her boyfriend refused to support her and her parents refused to accept her, so she had no other option except to undergo an abortion without the help of a medical expert.
I couldn't do it at home because I know my parents are strict. I traveled to Mombasa and didn't use anything from the hospital. Instead, I used the traditional method. I made a concoction of soda and local herbs. When I drank it, it caused bleeding. After a while, some discharge came out, but not everything came out. So I had to go to the hospital.
Health practitioners like Monakarama Athman Mohammed say Mercy is lucky. Not all women who perform unsafe abortion make it to the hospital.
And you get somebody, maybe the uterus has rotten, gets a condition called septicemia. Septicemia is a very severe state of the sepsis, and most of the time when it goes to the bloodstream, it has to go all through the body, even to the brain. Now we get mortality.
Abortion is illegal in Kenya unless the mother's health is in danger. But doctors estimate that nearly 500,000 abortions each year take place in Kenya, the majority of them unsafe. Leila Abdul Khair Isaac is the Chief Executive Officer at the Youth Voices in Action Initiative, a women's reproductive health advocacy group. She says there are too many stories like Katana's and says the group wants to help young women dealing with unplanned pregnancies to make better decisions.
Women and girls, most of them, they don't have information on reproductive health. We also provide information of the abortion complications, the post-abortal care, and the issues of the patient's rights, like their rights in terms of them to access reproductive health services.
The group trained skilled hair braider Emily Nasubo to talk to clients about reproductive health. She says the heartbreaking stories of women and girls going through painful abortions motivated her to support the initiative.
This program.
Kennedy Miriti coordinates the hospital's reproductive health program. He says the death rate among pregnant women in Kenya is very high.
We are also exploring on what are these causes of maternal mortalities that we have not identified that are causing all those mortalities out there. And definitely abortion is one of them.
Doctors estimate that roughly 7 women and girls die every day in Kenya due to unsafe abortion, and thousands more are hospitalized. Halima Gongo, VOA News, Kilifi County, Kenya.
Now to Chad, where Human Rights Watch is revealing its findings on alleged atrocities committed by Chadian police against civilians over the last 3 years. In its report, Worse Than Hell, Death and Torture at the Korotoro prison, the organization says in October 2022, thousands of people flooded the streets of Jamena and several other towns in the south to protest an extension of the transitional government by 2 years. Joining me from Burlington, Vermont is Louis Marge, the Central Africa Director for Human Rights Watch. Mr. Marge, what are the most damning results of your investigation, and why is it important to publish it now?
Thanks for having me. The most damning parts of this investigation, quite simply, was that the government of Chad, after these October 2022 protests, put hundreds and hundreds of men and boys into these large trucks and transported them for 3 days through the Sahara Desert. Men and boys were dying. Their bodies were being thrown into the desert. They were being denied water, adequate shelter, and food. Once they got to this prison in the middle of the Sahara, Korotoro, men continued to die there. So the most damning result is the loss of life, but also the conditions of the prisons. This is a prison that's run by Boko Haram fighters. On the insides, yes, the National Army protects the outsides of the prison, but on the inside, the prisoners themselves were very much forced to be managed by Boko Haram fighters. This was a prison in which forced labor is used, and it's a prison in which isolation chambers are used frequently. Mm-hmm. We publish this now because this is a new government under Mohamed Debi. He just won his first election in May. And we wanted to make a call to this new government to close down a main section of this prison at Korotoro. But also, this type of research is very sensitive. It takes a long time. We spoke with 72 former detainees from Korotoro prison. There was a lot of issues around safety and security for these detainees. Mm-hmm. And so it took a lot of time to get the research done.
Luis, I note that you had a 38-page report on this, and it's extensive work. But I also note that the government spokesperson and also the Minister for Foreign Affairs in Chad did speak to French media denying the entire report and stating that nobody died on the way to Korotoro prison or at the prison, and that no one else has been treated inhumanely. How do you respond to that?
To that, I say to the minister that facts are very stubborn things. We've documented the names and the photos of many of the victims that we were able to identify, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I encourage the minister to launch a real investigation into how many Chadians, people that his government are responsible for, died on the way and at this prison.
Obviously, there's a disagreement about the facts here between Human Rights Watch and the government of Chad. What should be the next step?
Honestly, at this point now, I think it's up to organizations like yourselves. I think it's up to the media to recognize that the Chadian government is saying one thing and an organization like Human Rights Watch is saying something 180 degrees the opposite. We're talking about the loss of life that the Chadian government is completely denying. And it's really going to be up to independent arbitrators like the media to step in, do their own investigation, and really reinforce whatever position they're able to identify. The Chadian media has started this, and the Chadian media is getting former detainees from Korotoro up on the radio and on Chadian television, denouncing what the minister said and confirming our findings.
And what are your recommendations to the Chadian government? Should the Korotoro prison be closed?
One main section of Korotoro prison is not hospitable or humane in any regard, not only for people, but also just for basic animals. It should be razed to the ground. They also need to establish a means of communications to allow prisoners to speak with lawyers and family from this prison. The reason why this thing is out in the middle of the Sahara Desert is because they want to isolate them. But I think most fundamentally is the Chadian government needs to recognize that protest is a fundamental human right, and that protesters shouldn't be treated like terrorists, and they shouldn't be rounded up and shipped off to these terrible places. Instead, they should be allowed to peacefully advocate for the change they seek.
Louise, thank you very much for bringing this to light. Louise Marge is the Human Rights Watch Central Africa Director. Tanzanian police are detaining leading opposition Chadema party figures, including former presidential candidate Tundu Lissu. They have also rounded up several hundred youth supporters, according to a Chadema party official. The Chadema leaders were arrested in the southwestern city of Mbeya, where the party is holding a rally on Monday to mark International Youth Day, according to Chadema's Director of Communications and Foreign Affairs, John Mrema. Mrema says that around 500 youth supporters were arrested by police Sunday as they were making their way to the gathering. Tanzanian police announced Sunday a ban on the Chadema youth gathering and accused the party of planning violent demonstrations. Still to come, the Paris Olympic Games are now over. We'll look at how African athletes performed. Stay with us.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linoch Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, Rwandan President Paul Kagame, 66, was sworn in Sunday for a fourth term after sweeping to victory last month with more than 99% of the vote. Kagame took the oath of office in Kigali, pledging to, quote, preserve peace and national sovereignty and consolidate national unity. Rights activists say Kagame's overwhelming victory is a stark reminder of the lack of democracy in Rwanda. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is in Turkey on Monday for critical talks with Somalia as he seeks sea access in a, quote, mutually agreeable approach. Abiy says he appreciates Turkish President Recep Erdogan's support in hosting and mediating the talks. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud of Somalia says he is ready to, quote, engage in economic development cooperation with Ethiopia. And Egypt is bidding to host the 2036 and 2040 Summer Olympics, with the country's improving infrastructure and sports facilities key for a successful African bid, according to the head of the African National Olympic Committees Association. The continent has never staged an Olympic Games. In Kenya, where same-sex relations constitute a crime punishable by up to 14 years in prison, the only option for the LGBTQ+ community is to meet through dating apps and social media. But now those Kenyans say the platforms are being used to trap victims in a web of blackmail, extortion, physical and sexual assault. Juma Majanga reports from Nairobi.
Kelly Matthew Muteti is making his way to the Milimani Law Courts in Nairobi on a quest to seek justice. The 37-year-old openly gay Muteti says he lost 500,000 Kenya shillings, equivalent to about $4,000 plus other household items, when a man he met online and invited to his house drugged and robbed him. Muteti says he could not report the incident to police for fear of being prosecuted because of his sexual orientation. He says he was also fired from his job for raising the issue of his safety.
But if it's discovered that you have a different sexual orientation, one, the police will either jail you that point in time, or if you actually find someone who's slightly friendly, they'll try to investigate. They reach one stage, they ask for more money. So in essence, you lose more than you gain. So you just leave that case.
Same-sex relations are a crime in Kenya, punishable by up to 14 years imprisonment. According to GALC, the Gay and Lesbian Coalition of Kenya, social media and dating apps have provided generally safe spaces for members to meet and interact. But that is changing, says Kelly Kigera, GALC's Emergency Security Response Officer.
When you're meeting a fellow queer person or gay person, they catfish you from the sites or from these applications. And then when you're going to meet them, you find that they're blackmailing you because of your sexual orientation or gender identity. By this is where they try and rob money from you, or out you to the public, or beat you up, or harass you, or even rape you.
Kigera says GALC has recorded more than 1,000 cases of blackmail and extortion against their members in the last 12 months, up from 50 cases recorded previously over a similar period. Kigera says the group wants safety and security parameters put in place to protect their members.
We cannot limit people's way of doing or way of their life of accessing this app. But there is an aspect of us making people accountable. The people who are using this app are the people who own their applications, or the people who are more driven, even the police officers, to open doors for people to report so that people can have justice.
In February last year, Kenya's Supreme Court upheld the right of LGBTQ+ organizations to register in the country. The ruling has emboldened organizations like GALC to encourage their members to take some extortion and blackmail cases to court. Muteti, however, is not optimistic about getting justice.
Only time our issues will ever be heard is when someone who has a lot of empathy, who listens to our cases, and doesn't view us for our sexual habits and view us for the lifestyle that we are human beings. That is the only time our court cases will be heard. Otherwise, for as long as we have heterosexual people who view us for the sexual habits we have, we will never have our cases heard.
A bill recently introduced in the Kenyan parliament seeks to increase the maximum punishment for anyone found guilty of same-sex relations from 14 years imprisonment to death. Juma Majanga, VOA News, Nairobi.
The Paris Olympic Games are now over, and it's on to Los Angeles for the 2028 Summer Games. The LA will become the third city in the world to host the Games 3 times as it adds to the years of 1932 and 1984. But before we move ahead to Los Angeles, VOA sports analyst and host of our Olympics podcast, Chasing Gold, Mukbil Yabaru, joins us. Mukbil, tell us more about the sports yesterday. How many African countries medaled this year?
Absolutely, Esther. Thanks for having me. If we're just looking at it right here, 12 African countries have medaled, starting off with Kenya with the most. They have a total of 11 medals. South Africa, Ethiopia, Algeria, Egypt, Tunisia, Botswana, Uganda, Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire, Cabo Verde, and Zambia.
I like the list. Now, there were some really interesting stories, you know, in this Olympics year. Can you share a few with our viewers?
Absolutely. If we're just looking at it, to me, some of the key stories have been a story like Tamret Tola, who won the men's marathon, right? He was not even supposed to be on the team. He was a late addition due to an injury happening, and then took the chance, what do they say, but take the bull by his horns?
Yes.
And then he's able to win gold. Like, not only did he medal, but he won gold. You know, a story like that is amazing. We spoke about Iman Khalif last time on the segment, you know, where at the time she had yet to win, but she ends up winning gold for Algeria. With all the noise that has been surrounding her throughout this Olympics, she's been able to come away with the gold, and she says all glory, you know, to God and her family and her supporters for sticking with her throughout. So it has been there's been too many. Another one quickly before we, you know, I know I don't have so much time, but Sifan Hassan is another one, Ethiopian Dutch runner who ended up medaling in 3 different sports, right? Marathon, she gets gold, bronze in the 5,000 and bronze in the 10,000 meters.
I'm very curious to know if you, Mukbil, had to choose the African face of athletics, which country would that be?
To me, at the moment, if I'm just looking at what I saw this Olympics, right? Letsele Teboho, it's very difficult to make an argument for anybody on that level, simply because for the men's athletics, he ran in the 100 meters final, 200 meters he won gold, and then he won silver in the 4x400 for Botswana. I believe it's their first silver in that competition. So to me, he is the one. But if I was to also throw somebody else in there, Beatrice Chebet, you know, won 2 golds. You know, she came away with the gold in the 5,000 and the 10,000 meters for the women as well. Phenomenal performers both. The future of Africa is bright.
So the continent is very happy. Now, if I had to throw in a very short question, why are some of the athletes leaving Africa to do this for other countries?
Oh, it's tough, it's tough. Sometimes, you know, there's a little bit of disputes between some of our federations, as we've seen, the lack of build and infrastructure, but I feel it continually with somebody like Luol Deng, who did what he did for South Sudan basketball. We're starting to see bigger players and bigger names coming in and, you know, really doing some amazing work on the continent.
All right, Mukbil, thank you so much.
Thank you for having
Mukbil
me.
Yabaru reporting live for us here about sports. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.